Grant, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you being here. You just spoke at our last meetup in, was that August?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that. You've been kind of on a whirlwind tour. You've kind of come out of nowhere. Now you're a published author, been on Brandon Turner's podcast, just making your way around. So who is Grant?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been a wild ride. So Grant Franck, I live in Southeast Nebraska, south of Lincoln. I've got a wife, Laura, 2 kids, Madeline and Brendan. We invest in multifamily real estate in Southeast Nebraska area. Started investing in 2016 and been full-time since 2019.
Gotcha. What were you doing before that?
Yeah, before that, I was a conductor for BNSF Railways. I started out there pretty much right out of high school, 19 years old. If you don't know anything about it, it's a great job if you don't have kids or a wife. After that, it starts to suck pretty bad.
Kids, wife, and a life?
Yeah. So you always hear better, BNSF stands for better not start a family. Like that's the saying out there. Yeah. So it's a lot of traveling. The hours suck. You're either working midnights or afternoons, or you're on a trip for 3 days and then you're home for a day. So it was a great job when I was single, 19, 20, 21. Once I got married, I was like, okay, we can make this work. My wife worked a lot too, so it was fine. But then once we started having kids, I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. That's tough. I started looking around for something else. Yeah.
How old are you now?
38.
38. Okay. Yeah.
You need to think about it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Once we get this close to 40, it's like,
we all have to.
Yeah.
39. Chris is 39 and 475 days.
Yeah.
So
I'm 40.
Yeah. Okay. So 38. So about the same time. Yeah. I left my job when I was 33.
Yeah.
Certainly was not to the extent of yours. I know I have a lot of friends that were in the railroad, but what was your moment how'd you pick real estate, I guess?
Yeah.
Like you're sitting there, you're working 80 hours a week?
I mean, it depended. Yeah. So it was just dependent on the week, but like I'd be working a lot, which was fine. Like I enjoy working. I was always like somewhat handy. Like I could do enough just to be dangerous. So I was like, well, I'll just be like a handyman or a GC. So I was Googling around like jobs for GCs, and a post came up about how landlords are the best customers for GCs or handymen, because if you keep them busy, then you always have business. So I searched for that. I came across a Bigger Pockets episode where a handyman became a landlord. He recommended a book on there, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Read that, and then
that's the gateway drug.
Yeah, it was the gateway drug. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I had the same experience in 2017. I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I just remember standing up in the middle of the night, like I'm halfway through the book. I'm like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like,
I read it in 2008.
Oh, really?
Didn't do a thing about it.
Takes a while to process.
Yeah.
It takes a while to process for some individuals. No, I wish I would have read it earlier. I heard about it from a guy. He was a cab driver in New York. I don't think he was licensed, because he met me and my wife like right outside of baggage claim. He's like, oh yeah, we'll take you wherever. Price, it'll be good. Yeah. And then on the way, he tells me about Rich Dad, Poor Dad and asks me for a loan for $5,000. So I was pretty turned off by the book. I was like, I don't think I want to read this. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, getting, hustled for $5,000 by a cabbie. But really glad I picked it up. So kind of break down your thought process when you started, because I think, we're part of this mastermind. There's some young people in there. There's people that have been doing it for a while. Some people, their parents did it. I didn't come from that background. Doesn't sound like you did either.
Yeah. So my dad did have a duplex when we were growing up.
Okay.
But he was the typical like tired landlord, just hated it. Every time a tenant called, it's like, oh God, dude, what's going on now? And he's up there on the roof, putting tar on the roof, and I'm holding the ladder for him while he's cussing. I'm like, okay. So once I got the idea to do real estate, I was like, I don't want to do it like that. Let's like make this a little bit better. So we started buying, and my wife's an accountant, so she's like an Excel master.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, it's great. She can build Excel spreadsheets that'll knock your socks off. So we started buying, and we did a couple like spreadsheets of like, well, if we do this so many times, with the tax benefits that you get with real estate, that would offset her income. If I can get to this cash flow number, like we'll be good to leave the job. So we just kind of slowly started doing that. Took 3 years. It was obviously a good time to buy, right? Mm-hmm. Every time in the history is a good time to buy. So we had those good 3 years where we got some good properties and got the cash flow built up.
Oh, wait. Go back to what you just said. Every time in history is a good time to buy. It's always
like looking back, you're like, oh, that was a good time to buy.
I agree, man.
Yeah, it's a great time to buy.
I agree.
Everything looking back is hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but do you think now's a good time to buy?
I don't know. I was actually just texting Rob from just to like, what's your take on what's going on right now? So I don't know if the deal makes sense. Like I'm not changing my criteria right now. If it makes sense to me, like with our underwriting, then it's a good time. But I'm not changing what we're doing just to get deals.
Because you are, go through your model on what you, I guess, were and currently are looking for foreign assets and properties.
I just describe it as like super boring stuff. So we're just picking up duplexes, fourplexes, eightplexes, some 10 units, just basic cash flowing stuff. Nothing that's like really huge projects. It's very boring. Like it's a slow burr. So we'll buy it. As people vacate, we'll renovate it. And then once we do that enough, we'll refinance it and then take that capital back out. So we're not doing like the short burrs where we're like turning the money quick with hard money. It's just really slow, boring real estate.
I guess we're slow and boring too.
Yeah.
We're not doing hard money stuff.
Yeah.
Plus the size of stuff we're doing, you'd never make it work at hard money.
That'd be tough.
Every once in a while we will.
It's maybe something you and I get on the side.
Yeah. Also, there was a period of time where we were refinancing a property every month. It felt like. I think it's been
back when money was cheap and everything was fun.
And rates just kept going down.
Yeah, I think it's been it's been a while since a refinance.
Which is why I would advocate that right now is a great time to buy.
Yeah. You know, I've had some conversations with some fairly experienced people and kind of like taking a step back, looking at everything from a macro perspective. You can look at the numbers of cash on cash, et cetera, but there's also the actual price of the asset. Mm-hmm. And right now prices are depressed everywhere. Yep. They've lowered. So if you look at it from that perspective, sure, you're maybe going to struggle on the cash flow, but if you feel that the market is going to continue to be cyclical like it always has been, and that prices are going to go up, now would indicate the best time to buy, because although, you know, your cash on cash may be a lot smaller and, you know, instead of making, you know, $1,000 a year from a unit, you're making 250 or 300. I'm throwing that out there. Yeah. But the equity increase might be, you know, 20, 30% on that asset because of the price you're buying it at. Well, that number becomes a lot bigger if you're buying these units, you know, throwing out the number 100,000. Well, they're worth 130,000. It's going to take a long time to make that much cash flow. Yeah. So I think that's something to consider, you know, but regardless, we're never buying properties that don't cash flow. Yeah. I mean, there could be, you know, we have a larger project, 160 plus units. It's a big construction project. So of course there's no cash flow to begin with, but there's a very clear line of sight to get there. Yeah. And I think that's sometimes what people miss. Like I would like your take on this, Grant. Oftentimes, you know, you'll see a 12plex and rents are $600 and the numbers don't make sense. Like it doesn't, it's negative cash flow. However, you know, the neighboring property with some minor upgrades are renting at $995. What's your take on like those types of assets? You walk in and it's not cash flowing, but you see that line of sight. Yeah. Is that something that still interests you, or? Because I know you're pretty strict with your criteria. At least that's what I've gathered. Yeah,
to a point. So I want to have like, I'll have to look at the leases, right? I don't want to go in and have to kick everybody out. And then you've got the 6-9 month project and you're hoping it's going to work out. I want it to at least cash flow or break even day one, and then we'll slowly do it. And then I just know like this is a 3 or 4 year project to where we get everything turned around. I just like, I've only flipped one property in my life. It's not my game. I like the slow, steady, boring stuff. When you have those time frames on them, that time crunch, I just don't, that's not my jam. So if we can buy it and it's going to break even or, you know, cash flow a little bit, great. But if we're losing $1,000 a month on top of the operating costs and the holding costs, we're probably not going to take it on.
So if you were losing $1,000 a month on a 12 unit, but you knew that by the end of year 2, you'd be making $2,000 a month, you still wouldn't buy it?
Probably not.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the point, like for our portfolio, for my wife and I, like I'm not at the point where I need or have the desire to like grow like that. Like I'm like, nah, it's not worth the stress to me.
Do you have investors or are you by yourself?
Some of them, we have some JV deals, but we're starting to try to do more stuff with just us.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, cause I go to the 50 events and all my masterminds and I see everybody just like kicking ass. I'm like, gosh, I come home, I'm all fired up. I'm like, I want to do that. And then I get home, like my boring life is kind of nice. You know, nice. I don't have to worry about that stuff. So
there are pros and cons.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's a time to, you know, really put the foot on the accelerator. Mm-hmm. But I mean, sometimes patience is really important and sticking to your fundamentals. Like if you can just stick with that consistently.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been doing this for how long? 6 years?
2016. So
16, 8
yeah.
years, 8 years. So, I mean, you double that time frame.
Yeah.
You know, keep being a boring investor.
Right.
That's when you kind of start seeing this exponential curve of these assets you're buying for, you know, 40K a unit or, you know, maybe worth 120K by then. And now you've doubled or tripled your portfolio size. Slow and boring is a stable asset.
Yeah.
Management. What do you do there?
Yeah. So I started out in the beginning, like out of necessity, I managed everything myself just because I needed all that cash flow to leave the railroad job. So I was willing to do, you know, whatever I had to do. I was doing the management, I was doing the maintenance myself, all that stuff while working the railroad job. So while I was doing that, I was like, I don't really think this is probably what I want to do, how I want to build my business. At that point in time, I was treating it like this is a business I'm going to build, not just like a side hobby. So I started developing like systems and processes, really automating everything I could in the beginning when it was easier to do it that way rather than like trying to do it now when you're trying to retroly do it. So I started in the beginning with just like simple stuff like Google Forms. Like when you have 4 or 5 units, just using Google Forms instead of paper applications makes a big difference. You know, got a Google phone number, so they don't have my cell phone number anymore. There's still a few that do, but most don't. So in the beginning, I was just doing that, systematizing it, doing as many processes as I could. And then about 1.5 years ago, we brought on a full-time VA. She's out of the Philippines, Kay. And so she handles all leasing, maintenance, listings, all that stuff. We're starting to do a little bit of QuickBooks with her as well. So she's doing a little bit of the billing side too. So
how'd you train that individual? I'd love to know like step-by-step process, like for a person that is not experienced in this. How do you do this from both the hiring, part of it, your, I guess, expectations on the front end, and then the initial training and ongoing training?
Yeah. So we went through a company in Florida called Virtually Incredible. They train VAs for property managers. So she came in already. She was fair housing trained, kind of understand the basics of being what a tenant is and all the rental stuff. She also had history in like hotel and that sort of stuff in the Philippines. Nice. So she kind of understood a little bit of it. So what I did when I made that decision, I just started like screen recording my days. Like, this is how I do these things. And I would have a microphone and I would talk into it and be like, so when we list a property, these are the steps we go through. And I just made like a video SOP pretty much of what we do. We also kind of wrote up some stuff. So when she came on, like I just knew the first 2 or 3 weeks, like I'm just go here. And I made like dummy properties in my property management software, dummy stuff in our QuickBooks. And I just said, go through and just play, just do what you need to do and work through these things. I'd give her different scenarios of like, okay, we have a maintenance concern here. And then she would go in and do it. And I would check to see if she knew how to do it. Nice. So she spent 2 or 3 weeks doing that. And then since then, she's been running it since then. Gravy. Yeah. And then as something comes up, like we'll do a new system or a new process, I'll just make a new video or if I need to, or we'll talk through how to do it. And she's also came in and like has seen some areas where we could improve and had some suggestions on stuff we could do. So you hear her horror stories about VAs and how bad they are, but we just must have got really lucky because
Was that your first VA?
First VA.
No
first hire.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I mean, horror stories of VAs maybe, but there are horror stories of
employees and everything. Yeah. I mean, I think it's...
Do you struggle with the time zones or anything?
Not really. So she works our time zone. So she's working overnight for her times, which, I feel like I felt bad in the beginning, but she's like, if she didn't have this job, she'd probably have to go, over out of the country to work or on a cruise line to work
and make less.
So she's working at home with her kids, and that's, so she loves it. We're happy. We're super happy with her. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
And what does she all do for you?
Yeah. So she does everything she talks all tenant side communication. She does all that. So leasing, listing, maintenance concerns, renewals, move out procedures, inspections, all that stuff. She coordinates all that.
So you're just on a beach somewhere.
No, I wish. Yeah. I'm doing podcasts and stuff. No. Yeah. So she does that. And then I still stick with the underwriting and then I'll step in when I have to, and I'll handle more of the crews, the GC side, just because most of those are my buddies. Right. So I'm just making sure those turnovers are going well. And then she's kind of got the higher level view of and she'll kind of have to get on me sometimes hey, what about this unit? I'm like, oh, I forgot about that one.
Is that company still around that you found her through?
Yeah. Yeah. Virtually Incredible.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to ask actually.
No, what is, So you mentioned that she's taken over those tasks. Is your wife still helping you as on the accounting side, or do you guys?
So she really she did a little bit in the beginning, but she's busy enough at her job that we would come on the weekends and the evenings and try to reconcile stuff, and it was just so stressful. So we're starting to offload some of that to some local VA people, Timber.
Oh yeah.
Bookkeeping.
Yeah, bookkeeping. So they're going to come. They've made some amazing reports for us already. So they're going to take that just completely off Laura's shoulders, and then.
Is that Brad Bader's group?
Brad's,
yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So we've been really happy with that so far.
Interesting. Okay.
Why not a VA for bookkeeping?
That's their VA. So
okay.
Yep.
So they oversee the VA, so you don't have to go through the training process, and they know what the expectations are.
I think I don't know what we pay per hour, but it's pretty cheap for the reports we're getting so far.
That's great.
So. Okay, cool.
You said you're underwriting still, that's a hard thing to let go of. How many deals are you underwriting a week?
It varies. I'll try to I'll say I'll do a couple a day, but it doesn't always happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we're still looking at 5 to 10 deals a week. It's nothing massively huge. It's starting to ramp up now. The deals are starting to look a little bit more attractive.
On market stuff? You have an agent? How do you find your stuff?
So the vast majority of what we've done is off market, just direct to seller, or different relationships we have. The one we're kind of working on now came from our bank through a property manager. So stuff on the market just doesn't really seem to make sense. I bought one property off the MLS.
So what's your outreach like? How do you get a hold of the seller?
Yeah. So I do very direct mailing. I'm not doing mailing from a company. I'm literally printing the letters and signing them myself. And I've got targeted zip codes, targeted buildings that I want in those zip codes. And I just not hammer them once every quarter. I send them a letter.
How do you find who owns it?
PropStream, just different services like that. So, and it's a very personal letter. I'm not a broker. I'm not an agent. I'm just an investor. I want to buy your property at some point in time. I include a picture of my family because that kind of lowers the guard a little bit. So.
Yeah, I found that it was incredibly important. So I did a couple campaigns. Some I paid for, but the first one I did was a handwritten letter campaign. It was super simple. It was hi, my name's Colin. I'm an investor. I'm interested in buying your property. I'm not a real estate agent. I appreciate your time. And then what I would do, just to your point about lowering the guard, because I think anybody that gets this, a lot of people get offended. Mm-hmm. They're like, how do you know I have this? Yeah. Where did you get this information from? I would put my real return home address, which, ballsy or not, but it's also I figured I'm somewhat invading their privacy. So once again, they'd be able to look up me. Yeah. They knew where I lived. They knew all my information. Mm-hmm. So there was really nothing to hide there. Yeah. And I found that really helped the conversation go. And my responses were so much better with that than when I paid for a company to do it. Exact same format. It was nearly an identical letter, but no return address, or it was a PO box or something.
Mine goes to a PO box. So I don't know if I should change that.
Mm. I mean, it depends.
Try it out anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it also depends on what your wife thinks, but at the same time, I mean, the people you're targeting, you hope for, some at least decent responses. Mm-hmm. Those conversations, what are some of the big things that you've got out of them outside of deals? Because I always loved when I'd get callbacks from sellers. Some of them would be really interesting, and I don't know. They would go all sorts of different ways.
Oh yeah, you got the guys that think their property's worth $4 million. I'm like, oh, you got a duplex. Calm down. I know you think that that's what's happening right now, but that's not. Yeah. So mainly they're just unrealistic expectations. So
that's tough.
It's tough because you want to be honest with them, but you're not if you do that, you're going to come off as an asshole. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of having to be soft with me. I just don't think this is going to work out. I can't pay that much for that.
Do you ever give a price on the phone right away?
No, I never do. I always want to meet for coffee or just go walk through the properties or something. Cause real estate's about a building, right? But it's more like a relationship. It's
100%.
The building is secondary. You got to build that relationship with that seller or that person to make that work. And we've had really good luck. Everything we've done in Seward, and we've got 48 units in Seward.
Wow.
So you own half the town.
Well, it's pretty much, I don't know. There's some other bigger guys there, but has come from one letter in that I bought 3 properties from one guy, did great, did exactly what I said I was going to do, showed up on time, closed on time. He referred me to other sellers of other package deals that we bought. So just having that one good relationship with somebody can pay dividends for years.
Yeah. And how much did that letter cost you?
Whatever it was, 60 cents or whatever to mail it out. So
exactly.
Yeah. And then you just show up, you just be a good human being when you're doing the transaction. We're not trying to take advantage of anybody. If you want to sell, we're going to try to buy it.
Yeah, no, we just bought a deal recently. It was on the market. It was really overpriced. And I had a feeling, this individual owned quite a few other properties, and I had a feeling that like the price I offered, it was a non-starter for him, and I got it. But I noticed he had some other properties. So I was like, what if we throw some of these other ones in? We're going to stick with this other price. And, I got on the phone with him, which was really difficult with the agent. The agent's like, no, he doesn't want to talk to anybody. I'm like, let me deal with this because the deal's falling apart. Yeah. So like, let me go through my logic with this individual. And I broke it down to him. I told him the price. I told hhim exactly what the numbers were through the underwriting. I was like, this is why this is the price. Like if it would have been 2.5 years ago, interest rates are different. I was like, dude, I'm not saying that there's not value there, but this is where the market sits right now. And I can close super fast. And I just walked through it with him. He said he had talked to one other buyer before, and he hated the conversation. And he called back 15 minutes later. He's like, I'm really glad I had that conversation. Deal. Yeah. But it was once again, like listening to him. Like I let him talk a lot, his concerns, he didn't like the price. And I just said that's completely fine. If we don't do a deal, I want to do this deal, obviously, but it's not the most important thing. I think the most important thing for me to convey is like that I'm an investor. I'm fairly intelligent in this arena, and these are the actual numbers. So you may struggle to get these higher prices where I can actually come in and solve your problems quickly and liquidate this. And there's going to be no struggle, no hassle, no retrading. And I think a lot of people miss that. It's funny because sometimes I'll get into negotiations of selling properties, and I always, and maybe this is foolish, and negotiation 101, you should always, you don't say your price, but if you're listing it, you say your price, but you should be able to used to go back and forth. But usually the price I put out there is the price. Yeah. Like I give it a fair price where there's upside for the individual based on the CapEx that's going to need to be put into it. But the thing that drives me nuts the most is the people that come to you at day 59, of a 60-day due diligence, like, oh, I got to drop the price by, 20% because of this. It's like, you knew those items walking in. Yeah. It's you can identify those in the beginning and say it doesn't work through due diligence. Like I get that occurs, but doing what you say, saying what you do, I think is incredibly important in this business because we continue to get referrals after we close on a deal just from the smoothness of the transaction.
Just like you did.
Yeah.
No question, real estate, the people thing. It's really helped us. In fact, I don't know how we're doing it recently. I'm starting to do more of those people things because we found ourselves just so engulfed in the business that we couldn't really do it. And it's already starting to pay dividends. But one of the problems that always comes up is that there's an agent involved. And I know exactly which conversation Colin's talking about. And luckily he was able to push that through. But these complexes for us get larger and larger. And then a lot of times it's a whole agent team you got to get through. But regardless of whether it's a duplex or a 200 unit, like how have you navigated those waters? Have you ever had to deal with an agent? And is that best also just meet in person and explain you're here to, how have you navigated that?
So like agent wise, I try to avoid it. Like no offense to agents. I was an agent for like a month and a half. And I hated it. So I left. Like it's just not my jam. Yeah. There are very good agents out there. I've got some of my ones in like my smaller towns that are great. Like, but I would prefer to rather just sit down, like I said, with the investor and you can go over numbers because they're an investor. They understand numbers or they wouldn't be in this game. But yeah, I mean, it kind of gets muddy sometimes with the investors, with the agents, but sometimes there's not much you can do.
But sounds like you don't really deal with it that much.
I try not to. If I have to, then yeah, I mean, I can get along with about anybody, I'll go get along with them and sit down and talk to them, but I would much rather go direct to seller.
Let's get a little philosophical here though. Do you think that it's bad to do that? Like, do you think that, I've always been curious about this, and for some reason we have to work through a lot of agents, so they're my buffer on whether I feel bad or not. But if you're just with the seller, of course you want to buy it at something that makes sense for you, and the lower the price, the better the deal is for you. But like, where do you draw that line on how much they're giving up? Because, to use a scenario like Colin just said, I can send in, because we've done that on multifamily deals, where we'll send a little like, this is our underwriting, this is what it's worth. Yeah. Like, how do you justify bringing them down and not feeling bad? Because this is not a rhetorical question. I don't know the answer to this. I want it to be as low as possible so we can make a lot of money, but in the same breath, you want to respect them. So there's some rapport. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I always start with like what their goal is. You know what I mean? Like, what are you looking to do after this? Are you going to put this in a savings account? Or do you have something you're going after? So we need to have a certain amount that we need to leave the transaction with. But, you know, I've never really felt like I've taken advantage of anybody. You know what I mean? Like, we've all agreed on the contract. And usually they're sophisticated investors as well. I wouldn't, you know, if there was like a 90-year-old by themselves, like then I would be like, where's your family at? Let's have a conversation just as I'm a human being and I'm not going to take advantage of that. But I mean, I personally, I don't feel bad when I talk directly to sellers. I feel like it's a better transaction. It's a smoother transaction. Because again, no offense, agents that are listening, but when they get involved, prices get inflated because they have a commission to make and they got to bake that in. Where if it's just me and the seller, like, hey, this is the asset. This is what it does. This is what insurance prices are now. Like, I know you haven't shopped for insurance in 45 years, but it's expensive as hell. Yeah. Interest rates now are this is where we're at, and this is where we need to be to make this sort of money. And a lot of times you get balked in, like, I'm not going to sell it for that. I'm like, okay, well, like if the tables were turned, would you buy this for negative $20 cash flow?
I like that.
Like, you're an investor. Like, we're on the same page. Like, I totally get it if you don't want to sell it, but would you buy this property that you're selling me at this price? And that's usually like, that kind of brings the guard down too, because it's not combative. It's just like, I mean, it's a number. Like, would you do this deal? Yeah. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that line. If the tables were turned, would you buy this?
So,
yeah, you shouldn't feel bad about that's the biggest thing, is just to make sure they understand what they're doing.
Right. And like, I'm not like, I'll talk shit on wholesalers all day long. Like, I'm not a wholesaler and just being like lying to the seller and be like, I'm going to do this. And then somebody else is going to close for you. Yeah. Like, that's not what we're doing. Like, I'm buying the property, and it's usually my wife and I are buying the property from you. Like, so I feel completely confident.
Well, you did say you talk shit on wholesalers all day. So I'm curious.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Yeah. Let's jump into that.
Yeah. I mean, I've never met a good wholesaler. I'm sure they're out there. I've just never met one myself.
What makes them bad?
Just fly by night. Like, I've just never gotten it. I'm sure there are great ones out there.
Their knowledge base seems to be lacking.
It's always like, and it's always the brand new person that I deal with. Like, they're just getting into real estate. I'm like, hey, I'd love to teach you about real estate. Like, we'll talk through this, but this is a terrible deal. And this property is on Zillow for $100,000 and you're sending it to me for 110 because there's a fee on it. That's not how this works. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm sure there are great wholesalers out there. I know there's some. I've just never dealt with them. And I just don't do single family stuff. So, and that's where a lot of that wholesale stuff comes into play. But
yeah,
I just think it's a multi-level marketing scheme, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't.
What's the difference then between a wholesaler and an agent?
Yeah, good question.
Ooh, there we go. All right. I've wholesaled a few properties early on, kind of helped me get out of my job.
Dirtbag.
Yeah. It was great. Yeah, I wholesaled a property. I think it was like $22.5K a door. So whatever, they're doing fine. Yeah.
I'm not hating on wholesalers, but I think, sorry.
No. But to your point, what I have found the biggest disconnect is the only focus typically of a wholesaler is to make their fee regardless. So lots of times there's smoke and mirrors. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes they're not educated in real estate because it's the starting point. It gives them their capital to get going. So they have no real world experience of like the difficulties of real estate. Their CapEx budgets are just astronomically wrong.
Terrible.
And then, I mean, more so to your point, there is a lot of deception, and that's terrible to do when anybody that's not in real estate, meaning 99.5% of the world, like their house transaction is one of the biggest, most stressful decisions of their life. And basically changes their entire way they view the world. And to just go in there and just flippantly like, oh yeah, this is a great house. I'll buy it for 200. The house is worth 180 and they're trying to sell it for 220. Yeah. And I see this all the time. Yeah. So
there's no barrier of entry.
There is. I know like specifically Nebraska's changed the laws some bit. And
which I don't agree with, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really fix the problem, but no. I'm sure they're great wholesalers out there. I just don't know.
No, I've got a couple buddies that are really good, that own real estate, that are professionals at it, like really understand the business better than most every agent out
They're
there.
basically agents, but better.
But better and find better deals because they understand the underwriting. They understand they go direct to seller. And most importantly, they're creating open communication.
Yeah, that's huge.
Of their intent. And that's always what I did when I was wholesaling a property. I was like, here's the deal. I'm going to buy this regardless, but my intent is just to flip it. So I'm going to bring this person by. They're going to buy it from me. I'm going to add a fee to the contract.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, only once the individual was fine with it up until I told him what I was making the whole time, up until like I actually got paid from it, and he was pissed about it.
Yeah.
And then he sent the person that bought me the property a letter to tell him that I was deceiving him.
Oh.
That other person knew exactly what I was doing as well. So, that was kind of just a sour feeling.
Yeah, if you know good wholesalers, I'll get on their list and see and give them another try. But
Brad's brother, Dave, he's good. Yeah. So he's good.
Yeah, he understands, and he's also owned, and he
owns a bunch of real estate, and he used to be a contractor, and so he's.
And you know what he's good at is the direct to seller stuff, and the barrier to entry for wholesalers is low, but also when they're single family, I mean, there's just so many out there.
Yeah.
And the difference between wholesalers and agents is that wholesalers don't have like a profession to keep up
to withhold their standards.
Right.
So even though I'm going to Northmark buying this large complex and they raise the price so they get a fee, they need to act in a professional manner to keep their license, to keep the good fame of Northmark. And like, it's a little different than just someone who heard about a YouTube podcast and they're like, I'm going to go cheat this grandma out of her life savings. Which is unfortunate, but I don't agree with this whole Nebraska wholesaler thing. I still don't understand it. I do not understand. Look, sure, you can say that some wholesalers are dirtbags, so are agents, so are doctors, why are you making it so that I couldn't go to this person, get under a contract for 100, sell it to this person for 110? If I didn't do anything deceiving, why do I have to have a real estate license?
Yeah.
That is lobbying at its best is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, and the agents have a fairly hard lobby as well, right? Like,
of course,
that's who pushed it through. But
and 98% of the agents suck anyway.
Oh man, we're getting brutal here.
Yeah.
We're getting brutal.
Look it up. Any successful agent will tell you.
Oh yeah, it's not a.
It's
secret.
just like I didn't know what I was doing with my life, so I was an agent. And by the way, I've thought about being an agent. Like
me too. I've done all my courses.
I've done it all. Yeah.
Back in the day, just because, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's shit. I practiced law for 10 years. I think at least 50% of those assholes suck too. So like, you're going to find bad electricians, you're going to find bad mechanics, but if there's got to be a healthy balance on how to protect the consumer and also not just let the lobby
win,
which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I guess we can get into big drug now, pharma.
Right.
Oh man, don't get me started there. If you want to read, what is it? The Empire of Pain. It's about the Sackler family. So it was before all those shows started coming out, Painkiller. So I read that book. I will tell you, I could not stop reading it. And honestly, it was a weird feeling because what they're doing is horrible, but I was almost in awe of their ability to market, and their marketing capabilities was just top notch.
Have you seen any of those?
No.
No, but basically they control like the Sackler family, OxyContin. What was another one? The family started off doing lobotomies.
They did, yeah.
Seriously. But what they did is they created the medical, so they're all doctors, but then they created the Medical Professionals Journal. So they became like, this is like the New York Times is what they created.
Yeah.
And then on the back end, they had their pharmaceutical company. Well, their pharmaceutical journal basically said all these great things about it. So they were controlling perceptions on every single aisle.
Mind blowing.
And then they started adding in, 22, 25-year-old drug salespeople to go and peddle.
Attractive.
Attractive to basically
sell
peddle
their
drugs.
Oxy.
Yep.
So literally going throughout and providing kickbacks and everything. But it was interesting controlling the narrative. They controlled the narrative in every single arena. So they didn't look bad. There was just like no angle to take them down.
Here's what's messed up. They made billions upon billions upon billions. And I think there was zero jail time when they were found guilty.
There was none.
And it was like a $300 million fine. And then I just read something recently.
I think it was billions, but it doesn't matter.
It was a fraction of what they had made with no jail time. And there were thousands of deaths from Oxycontin getting pushed.
I would say that it's affected millions.
Oh yeah,
at minimum.
That's unfortunate. And
Like
then I
ruined
read
millions.
something recently where Nebraska some judge wanted to say, hey, this wholesale thing's real, and find a wholesaler like $450,000.
You get it, Judge. Yeah. You get it. Good for you.
It's like, dude, hold on.
Loser.
The guy's fee was like $15K. Like, get off his, like, that's crazy.
That seems a little excessive.
It really is. It's unfortunate.
Judge, if I'm ever standing against you, I didn't call you a loser, but just know,
I called you a loser.
Yeah, just know that's how I feel in this moment.
There are some losers that are judges as well.
Yeah.
You've experienced that. How are you? Okay, creative financing. You ever do any creative financing, or you're born there too, or you just sit on your Scrooge McDuck money and just come?
Yeah, no, we've done some creative. So like
swimming.
I wish. So one of our first deals in the beginning was I bought a duplex from a guy. I found it on Craigslist back when that was a thing, like finding duplex on Craigslist. Oh, yeah. And he was a retired railroader, so we really hit it off. It was a good relationship. I showed up, closed when I said I was going to do. And then I saw on the assessor side, he had 5 single family houses that were obviously rentals too. So I was like, hey, if you ever want to sell these, let me know. I'd be interested. He said, well, let's get through this first transaction and see what happens. Okay. So he calls back a week later and he's like, yeah, let's talk about it. So he brought up seller financing and I bought those 5 properties from him a couple weeks later.
I was just going to ask that. Do you ever work in the creative financing space?
Yeah.
So tell me what the seller financing looked like. Is that him holding the entirety of the note? Or?
Yeah. So he had owned these for a long time. So it was just straight seller financing. I think I gave him 10% down. This was like 6-7 years ago. So I don't remember all the details.
So you put down $2,000.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It was in Beatrice. So that was about
$1,500. Yeah. I gotcha.
So I bought those houses. And we had it for like a year and a half, and he was still an investor. So he had the bug. So he's like, hey, I found something I want to buy. Can you go to the loan, get a loan on these? Like, yeah, I still had room on my Fannie and Freddie Macs at that point in time. So I went and got, I was going to get 30-year notes on all these houses.
You were still working full time or had W-2s to showcase that, right?
I was still at the railroad.
I can't get I can't get those loans.
Yeah. So I was still
on single families.
No, I was still at the railroad, so it still worked. So we did that. I got the appraisals on all 5 of those, and they came back high enough that I only had to get loans on 3. And 2 of them were paid off.
That sounds horrible.
So so it was great. So I ended that transaction, that seller financing transaction that just came from one good transaction on a duplex. I ended up with 3 houses on 30-year notes and 2 paid off properties with the line of credit against them.
You know what's so crazy? And this is, sorry, Chris, don't forget your thought. It's just so crazy because I get lost in this after doing it for almost 8 years now. I just get lost in the day-to-day business of the grind of it and everything. And just thinking about every individual out there, you got 2 free houses, basically. Anybody can do this. Yeah. And the power of that is just unfreaking real. Yeah. The trajectory of your life, I try not to like dwell on the importance of like money, wealth, being rich, but like being poor sucks. Like I have had no money, overdrafting from my bank account, having to sleep on people's couches. Like I've had no money, like $0. When I say $0, like negative dollars, and what comes in the bank is paying off debtors or whatever. But to be able to have that type of security opens up so many different avenues in individuals' lives where you can actually like start being yourself and providing like true value to the world, rather than just, not saying you weren't a great conductor and you didn't provide a lot of value to both the railroad and yourself, but like, were you using 10% of your capabilities? Maybe, like, and that's maximum. And that's what most people are doing in their everyday jobs, which is fine because you need money. You need to get those things, those basic necessities. But if you can solve for that just bottom arena of living and food, and then allow yourself to utilize your capabilities, it's just such a crazy world that opens up. And I think oftentimes people think of it as risky. Man, you got one life. What's the risk there? Like the risk is wasting time and not utilizing your time. So just that example of just those houses and that type of deal, that is life-changing for most of the world. Yeah.
I mean, I've had a few moments in my real estate career where I'm like, holy shit, this works. Like, once I got to the closing table, I was like, I cannot believe, like I did the work on the properties to improve the value. I got a new appraisal. I got a new loan, and I have 2 paid off properties with line. Like, this works.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
It's, I remember, so Chris started getting me into bigger projects, and it was a 24 unit. And I had also owed him $25,000 for another property he spotted me.
Bring that up.
Thank you, buddy. No, it was cool that you spotted me. no agreement, handshake agreement. It was cool, man. I really appreciate that because I didn't have the dough for it. Well, I was going to need to pay him back his $25K, and it was I was going to need to bring about $134,000. I did not have $134,000. I maybe had 5 or 7 or 9 grand, maybe. But I did have some properties at the time. And I had improved them. I fixed up the rents, but I didn't fully understand the BRRRR process. I had read it 100 times, but like, this is a year into real estate. Like, I hadn't seen the magic work. Right. Like, I saw the magic of increasing rents and somebody paying my mortgage, which is like, yes. And then getting my tax statement back and not paying, or my taxes like way reduced than what they typically were. But I hadn't seen this BRRRR and this increased, and it was down to crunch time. It was like 45 days out. I'm like, dude, I don't know where I'm getting this money, Chris.
No, you didn't say it to me.
No, I kind of kept it
until after we closed. You were that close to that.
Yeah, literally. So I'm like, man, I got to figure this out. So I just start talking to the bankers. I'm like, isn't there I think the values are increased. Is there something we can do with this? Like this refinance model. So 3 of the properties put through. 2 days before we closed on it, I got a check within $800 of the amount combined for all 3 properties.
Literally, so I had to loan him $800.
yeah. Literally came back. I was like deficient of $800, and at that moment, I was just starstruck. I was like,
light bulb.
Holy shit! Like, one, I had never seen a 6-figure check. Yeah. Like, I had never netted 6 figures at any of my jobs. Like, it always, after taxes ate it up, like it was always less than that.
Tax-free too.
Yeah, tax-free. And so when I got that, I remember I brought my daughter to closing. She was little. I had to change her diaper in there, which is awesome. I have her holding the check. But man, it was just such a powerful moment. And it was also really cool, to then reinvest it immediately, and not, kind of living still in that, not a fiscally intelligent mindset of okay, if I did that once with this, I put in, it was maybe $50,000 for those 3 properties of down payments to create 134. Yeah. Like, what can this create? Right. So yeah, it's just one of those amazing moments. And I think, now we have to slow down and sometimes say, hey, good job. We just, did well and made some money.
He just closed 328 units 3 months ago. Yeah. And we were just
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, and we just kind of didn't high five and moved on to the next thing. Go. And that's not a flex. Yeah. It's actually, we need to pause. Yeah. It's sad. We need to pause and celebrate. And
so that's why I like that's why I like talking to you, because it's you do start to forget. Any day I'm having a bad day, and yesterday I started my morning at 2:30 a.m. I'm home at 1 a.m. from us flying all day, meetings, appointments, getting out of town. But man, at the end of it, I just looked at him like, we're freaking lucky. Yeah. Dude, this sucks being away from the family. It's hard. I'm exhausted, no sleep, just constant thinking, talking, doing. But man, actually having a career in which you're actually doing something that's providing real value, jobs, and something tangible that you can see grow and both physically and financially affect other people, not even yourself. It's really freaking cool.
Yeah. You were talking about risk, and people don't want to get in the game sometimes because of risk. I don't know who I heard said it, but they said, look, the real risk is to sit around and think that the 18 bosses levels you have above you is going to provide for you and your family the next 60 years.
They're looking out for you.
There's nobody's going to take care of you better than you. Yeah. And so it's more risky maybe not to take that leap, which is really powerful, and something through these weird stories we learned it the great way. Speaking of risk, I'm curious. I don't want to forget this question. I heard you say you got this 30-year AMs. And you mentioned Fannie Freddie earlier. So you had that comfort level of putting them in your personal names just because you like to live on the wild side?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was, again, I was doing everything I could to leave the railroad. It was fine.
I would say there's 2 parts to that though. So continue.
Yeah. So I was fine with that at that point. We were just we'll get him in our name. We did quick deed him out into our LLCs.
So you weren't worried about the due on sale clause?
Nope. It made it. It worked. Because I did, before we did the refi, I told the guy, I told the banker, it's this is what we're doing. So
that's what's funny is the bankers, I've had some bankers say no. I've had some bankers say, we don't care. But the loan docs specifically say.
Well, here's the deal. If something goes bad with either the bank or you, they're going to exercise that.
Right.
I mean, that's what's going to happen. But to the point about risk, sure, there's risk putting in your personal name, all those. There's also a risk in taking more risky debt.
Right.
Oh, what type of risk do you want to play? Like everything in like life has some sort of downside.
And we're still at the size, like we're not where you guys are. Like we're still personal guaranteeing a lot of the loans that we have to sign because
we've got plenty of PGs out there.
You got some, but like once you get to that really huge scale, like then your PGs kind of go away. But like we're still like I'm still all in on all of our properties.
Oh, I mean, we just signed $20 million of PGs the other day.
Yeah,
we did. Do you have $20 million you can lend to us?
No, I do not.
So a lot of times we'll jump into these and we will get local bank debt because our business plan is to, purchase an asset for $6 million, put $2 million into it by fixing it up and then refinance it because it's now worth $10 million. Yeah. And Fannie and Freddie aren't the best at providing that $2 million line of credit. They have structures this way, but they still really loan to value. And it's just not local banks. They'll be like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And then that's why we do that. So that risk or that game we play is we are personally liable for that stabilization period, which has grown to be longer and longer now that they decided to increase the interest rates the quickest they have in the history of the United States. But I think we're starting to see a little drop here. We started getting Fannie debt quotes in the 4s.
Damn. That's nice.
It's go time, baby.
It is go time.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear that. Then you also said something about jobs. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but you guys were, I've never been, I'm trying not to get political here and I will not. Actually we can if you want, but, it's always been one of the things I always heard was, I'm an entrepreneur or I don't want to pay taxes or whatever because I'm creating jobs. And when I was young, I didn't really understand that. And I was like, that sounds like an excuse for not wanting to pay tax or whatever. But like, I've lived it. This isn't a talking point. The amount, hundreds of jobs that Colin and I have created or sustained or provided to all the GCs, all the property management companies, the subs, the bankers, like without us doing it and other people like us doing it, if some we're not the only ones, of course, like that is what makes the economy go. So like to see that happen, and I'm not shitting on BNSF because I was an employee for a long time. I was in the military. You couldn't get more of a cog in the wheel. Yeah. But like you're producing for like, you're building something and you can't do that outside of being an entrepreneur. I think it's so rewarding. And I never thought I'd say that.
Yeah. And it like, I didn't have that thought until like when I was writing the book, like that's when I like stepped back. I was like, I created like a business and like, it's a halfway successful business. You know what I mean? So like it takes some of that retrospect to like look back and be like, oh, I am an entrepreneur. I'm not just a slumlord. Like,
I mean, the first year that I had, paid out an individual contractor 6 figures, I was like, it's freaking cool. Like it was like $350,000 of work that I provided to this one guy and he had his team of people. He's not a big company. I mean, just in the past week, and I don't head GC projects. We have a property management division. They have their own contracting group, but I still run like just all sorts of different projects. I can think of a handful of people in the last week that I've given 6-figure contracts to that are just entrepreneurs, not a big company, not a big business, but like this is massively affecting them. They're making really good money. They're helping me out in situations, and it's, it's providing them a level of comfort as well in their household and to do what they love and what they're most skilled at. So it just can't be said enough.
I love making money. Of course, everybody does. I love not having a zero bank account. I love that if my kids need something, I can provide. My wife and I love doing that for the family. Those are sincere, but like I just never imagined when I read the Purple Bible, or when I got my first duplex or single, I never thought about like the amount of positive effect you'd have. It's really neat. Yeah. Tell us about your book.
So I just kind of wrote it on like
what's the name of it? Title.
The Unlikely Investor.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
I have a copy of it. I should have brought it for you to sign.
Oh, it's all right. I'll sign it sometime.
Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Cool.
So I just wrote it off like a goal. Like I like setting goals every year.
I think you forgot to bring a copy signed for me is what you're telling me.
I might have one in my truck.
I'm just messing with you, man. I will support the entrepreneur.
I appreciate it. So like, I just wanted to write a goal. So I was like, I didn't want it to be like, I want to work out 3 times a week or not be on my phone. So I was like, I'm gonna write a book because it's just not something I would have done. So I wrote a book. I started in December and I was done in like May or June and published it. So it's been good. Like it's just awesome. It's opened up a lot of doors, like meeting people that I wouldn't have probably met without it. kind of push me out of my comfort zone. I can stick at home pretty easily and just stay with my spreadsheet. So
were you always kind of a writer, or did you have some editing?
Yeah. Tell me how this process went, because I almost used a ghostwriter. I paid him and everything. The book came out. I was like, I don't like that. It's not my voice. I'm not going to do it. And I've really wanted to write a book forever.
Yeah. No, so I didn't do a ghostwriter. I just wrote it myself, and then I had an editor that would go through and they edited. I handed her what I thought was a pretty complete book. It came back very red. There was a lot of fixes. Yeah, she changed a lot of it, made it sound better, but it still stayed in my voice. It's very cool. It doesn't sound super academic or anything like that.
Good.
You know what I mean? It's very basic.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad is third grade reading level.
Yeah. It's very basic. You can read through it. I've had people tell me they read it in a day or two. It's just very basic.
People are going to pick up your book and learn and be motivated. People are going to pick up Sapiens and be fucking confused.
Dude, that's such a great book though. I'm listening to Yuval Harris's new book right now.
Sorry, back to your book.
So yeah, it's just your basic real estate book, kind of with my story intertwined of how I left the railroad and then some of my tips and stuff inside of there.
That's cool, man.
I just did it for a goal. I don't plan on selling 1 million copies.
I'm sensing that you feel you need to justify why you did it, and I think you should just revel in the fact
probably
that
so that's really good. Yeah. Especially somebody like you, Grant. You're really humble and you're just almost. And I think all of us are kind of in shock of what we've done. It's kind of just weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
I didn't grow up like this. This is out of the norm. So I'm anybody's oh, you're doing so great. I'm
it's not okay.
Step into the kitchen. Things are messy. Back there. The product maybe looks good, but you need to give yourself a lot of credit for just doing that, executing and accomplishing a really, really hard thing. I've had that as a goal, and now you're motivating me to do that, and I haven't accomplished it.
And when you're gone,
that's what I think.
That'll live forever.
Right.
That's what I think. Your kids will have it. Grandpa wrote a book.
Yeah.
Freaking cool.
One of the things, so on the back of the book, I didn't put my headshot. I put a picture of my family with my kids, and they just love that because they pick up the book and there's a picture of them on the book.
That's great.
I've got a copy at their school library and stuff. So it's
awesome.
It's fun to and they'll Google me, and that's the first thing that comes up. So having that relationship with my kids, besides showing them what I've done with the business, also you can do anything. I wrote a book.
How old are your kids?
8 and 10.
So they're old enough to start recognizing it's a big deal.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, so I just want to dive into it, and these are selfish for me.
Yep.
The editor, were they local? Was it a company? Do you mind telling me?
Yeah, so it was online. I find it through I think it was Fiverr. I found it. It was pretty highly reviewed.
Yeah.
And I sent it to, we had 3 rounds of edits.
About how much was it?
I would have to go back and look.
Okay, cool.
I can send that to you.
Couple grand.
Yeah.
Couple grand. Okay, cool.
That's cheap.
Yeah.
How many words was the book?
Question.
How many pages?
50, is it 50,000?
I would say it was 42,000.
42,000.
How many pages is that?
190, 180.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's just short enough.
Type 32 font.
Right. Yeah. Lots of pictures.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's cool. And how much time were you spending a day on it? Did you start with an outline? Did you research the book process before just jumping in?
Yeah. So at first I did a mind map is what it's called. You have your book and then you have all your different topics. So I did that, and then I wrote my subtopics off of that. And then I created an outline of the stuff I want to talk about. It wasn't necessarily in the order. It was kind of in a rough order. And then I just went in and just started once a day. I would take a topic and I would just write on it, because it's what we do every day. So I didn't have to research anything. It's just what's cash on cash return? All right. So I just write about what cash on cash return is. So I just do that daily, and it helped because it was the middle of winter. We had those really bad snowstorms this winter. So I was just stuck in the house anyways. So I just lock myself in a room and write.
Well, for your second book, what I've heard is amazing, which could make your route better. I don't know, but is there are things like Loom. Have you heard of Loom? It's like Zoom, but it has an AI bot. So you literally would just start talking
to it. Oh, that'd be nice.
So you could build an outline and stuff so you don't ramble, but you could literally just talk the whole time. And you have 2 things for you. AI is just keeping a transcript. And then the editor also has a video in case they see something different in the video. And that's how I would write it, because I wouldn't have the patience to sit around.
Awesome.
Yeah, that would be nice. Because then you could just talk.
You get your thoughts on a bullet point and then just start rolling.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think how I process things, because when I do type, there becomes something different that comes out, or when I write.
Well, you got to slow down to even type.
I know. Not you.
I can type fast, but I can talk faster.
1,000 little BB guns being shot in the background.
What Are you going to get bigger? Meaning, I'm sure you'll add units, but I'm saying, do you have interest in a 100 unit?
I mean, I do. Like, I see what you guys are doing and stuff, and like I do have interest in that. And sometimes, and I was even texting Colin about like my current deal, which is like 17 units. I'm finding myself like almost self-sabotaging it, like
because you could handle it just fine.
I can handle it just fine.
For
I'm
sure.
Like, oh man, this is another project. Is this the right time? You know, interest rates, blah blah blah.
Election.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Election. So like, I do want to do that. I don't know how hard I'll push myself to do that. You know, because I can. Well, that's pretty boring. It's pretty easy. You know what I mean? Like, do I need to do it? No. If the property comes up, like I would totally take it on.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't suggesting to get something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm saying if a 17 unit came across your desk and it worked.
Yeah. Yeah, I would do that. Like,
But the jump to 100 is a little different.
Tough. Yeah. I mean, like,
maybe it's an on-site or something. And
yeah, it would be a different process than what I do right now.
It is very different. Anybody, and I've said this before, all the guys that say bigger is easier, they're lying, they're wrong. They're wrong. Yeah. Like it's not. There's more complexity there. There's different systems you have to build. Now, that's not saying that the process, it's not, if you're comparing 300 single family homes and a 300 unit complex, sure.
Yeah.
But if you're comparing a duplex to a 100 unit, it's just different.
Yeah.
The way you operate it, the way that it functions is different. When you start adding investors, there's just all these different layers of complexity, and time becomes so much more important on schedules, because if you get behind on filling vacancies, turns, I mean, you can get eaten alive.
Yeah.
So I think, I always give that word of caution when people are like, oh, I want to buy, 60, 80 unit. How much have you bought? Well, I've got a single family. Yeah. Sure. I get it. But like, there's a lot of downside risk in that if you don't know what you're doing.
I think the ramp up to build the experience makes the 100 unit okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like
Grant Cardone saying you're an idiot for buying anything. Your first purchase, if it's under 300 units, is just not
stupid.
smart.
He just wants your money.
He wants your money. Yeah.
He's good at getting money, so good for him. Yeah. Kudos. All right, Grant, we're going to jump to the final portion of the show. All right, this is with the 100 burpee challenge for time. I'm kidding. It's the final three with CNC. These are the final three questions from Chris and Colin. Chris, do you want to start?
Daily habits. What are your daily habits? What's like something that's a little like non-negotiable that you try to get involved each day?
Yeah, so it's been tougher the last month because I've been traveling some, but we try to work.
Sounds like they're negotiable.
Yeah, sounds like it's negotiable. But I try to work out like 3 to 5 times a week. That's something I do. And then I can't say it's something that like we build in, but my wife and I just have really good communication. Like
it's great.
We talk either every morning while she's getting ready for work or at home after the kids go to bed. Like,
and you're present during the conversation.
We're present. Like we're talking about what's going on in the business too. Like I can also, with my job, it's kind of easy for me to just like not tell her about anything because like she doesn't want to hear about this tenant drama or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like so she'll ask about it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I've got going on. You know what I mean? So it's just good communication between her and I.
I hear a struggle there too because my wife will ask me, about work stuff, and I hesitate to tell her, not because I don't want her to know, but I'm like, do you really?
Yeah,
this is going to be really boring stuff, but they show interest. So, which helps the relationship.
It does. And like I have to remind myself that she is really like, she really wants to know.
She's inquisitive.
I'll tell you about this stupid tenant that's pissing me off. You know what I mean? So, but I enjoy that stuff.
That's cool that's a non-negotiable for you. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. You can always have some humor in it as well. Yeah. That always helps. Money's not an option. What would you be doing?
But I mean,
you can say it. Money isn't an option. You're about to say it.
Yeah. I don't know.
No, yeah.
I'd be doing what I'm doing now. Like I just,
Great.
like I love my life. Like I have an equal amount of stuff that fulfills me every day with my job. My family's amazing. My wife's unbelievable. My kids are great. Like I love what I'm doing. I love my life.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Someone wants to get started in real estate. How do you suggest they do it? Be a wholesaler?
No.
Be an agent, get their license.
Go get your license and that. No. I mean, there's so much content out there, right? Like we all probably learn from Bigger Pockets podcasts, all that stuff. There's good programs out there. There's books. There's just so much different content you can do. Go read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's the first one I would do.
Yeah.
I remember when I read that, like I felt like it was a religion to me. I was like, have you guys heard of
Same?
Have you guys heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Oh yeah.
Here, I'll read a passage from
Dude, did you guys know that you guys don't have to just always work all the time?
Right.
Like, and there's a different way to get paid.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say start with Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then all the books out there that you can. The Unlikely Investor available.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
a good one too.
Yeah. What's something? I had a fourth question. What's something that somebody that's starting should not do?
Wholesale. I'm just kidding. Should not do. Just not take action. Like, I don't know how to say that better, but like taking action is the biggest thing. There's so many people that go through all the education. They learn. They
should on themselves.
Yeah. I should do this. And then you get to analysis paralysis. And you're like, oh, I can't do it. Just take action. Like that first one is the most important, but the least important. Just get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lose money on it, but get that first deal done.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
How can our viewers, listeners, see more of what Grant Frank's doing? Because you've also been on Bigger Pockets.
Yeah. So I was on Bigger Pockets and a couple other podcasts, but I'm on Instagram. It's a really great follow. I'm super active on Instagram. It's a joke. But yeah, I do some stuff on Instagram. It's grant.franke, Francke. That's the biggest spot to find me.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you.